The secret, the vet, the daughter, and the untold truth. Hannah never imagined that a wounded puppy could tear open the deepest wounds in her heart. When her daughter, Laura, dragged her to that veterinary clinic, she didn't expect to see him there. The man who loved her, the man who hurt her, the man who never knew the truth. David. Their eyes met, and time stood still. Between the shock and the longing, the pain and the yearning, Hannah realized it all. There are secrets the heart never forgets, and there are loves that time cannot erase. If this story touches your heart, leave your like right now. It tells me it's worth continuing to bring these stories to you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any chapter. Tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what keeps this space alive. Thank you for being here. Part 1. The Puppy and the Unexpected Encounter. The afternoon was fading softly over the city of Seattle when Laura found the puppy. It was huddled amongst the bushes, shivering, with a tiny, injured paw and frightened eyes. The 8-year-old didn't hesitate. She knelt on the damp ground, slowly reached out her hand, and whispered sweet words, as if the small animal could understand every syllable. "It's okay, I won't hurt you," she murmured, and the exhausted puppy let itself be touched. When Hannah arrived home from the bakery and saw her daughter sitting on the sidewalk, holding that dirty ball of fur in her arms, her heart clenched. Laura's eyes were filled with tears and a determination that Hannah knew well, the same she carried when she refused to give up on something. "Mom, we have to help him," Laura said, her voice choked. "He's hurt." Hannah sighed. She knew arguing was pointless. She grabbed the car keys, arranged the puppy in a cardboard box lined with an old cloth, and drove to the only veterinary clinic she knew in the area. But when they arrived, they found the doors closed and a note. New address, moved across town. Now what? Laura looked at her mother, her eyes pleading. Hannah hesitated. She'd heard about a new clinic that had recently opened on the other side of Queen Anne. She didn't want to go there. She was tired. It had been a long day. But her daughter's gaze left no room for retreat. "All right," she murmured. "We'll try the other one." The drive was silent. Hannah drove with her thoughts elsewhere, while Laura stroked the puppy carefully, as if it were made of glass. When they finally arrived, the clinic was small but welcoming. It had a discreet sign on the facade and a little garden at the entrance, full of plants that looked lovingly tended. Laura was the first to enter, holding the box tightly. Hannah followed, her heart beating at a strange rhythm, as if she sensed something her mind didn't yet grasp. The receptionist smiled and asked them to wait. A few minutes later, the office door opened, and there he was. Hannah felt the ground drop out from under her feet. The air became thin, as if someone had stolen all the oxygen from the room. He was there, a few feet away, wearing a white lab coat, with that serene manner she remembered so well, yet different too. More mature, firmer. His brown eyes still held that intensity that unsettled her inside, but now they carried something new, a peace Hannah didn't recognize. He didn't see her immediately. He was focused on Laura, who ran to him with the box in her arms. "Doctor, please, he's hurt," the girl said, her voice trembling. David knelt down to her level, gently took the puppy, and examined the injured paw. His hands were firm, yet incredibly soft. Hannah remained paralyzed in the doorway, watching the scene as if it were a film in slow motion. "Calm down, little one," he said, his voice deep and soothing. "He's going to be fine. You did the right thing bringing him here." Laura let out a sigh of relief, but stayed glued to him, watching every movement. David cleaned the wound, applied an antiseptic, and carefully bandaged the paw. And then, as he stroked the puppy's head, Laura said something that made Hannah's heart stop. If I had a dad, I'd want him to be like you, Doctor. The silence that followed was deafening. David slowly raised his eyes, as if he'd been hit by something invisible. And that's when he saw her. Hannah. His eyes widened. His breath caught. For an instant, the whole world disappeared. There was only the two of them, and the entire weight of a past that had never been resolved. Hannah felt her face burn. She wanted to run, to vanish. But her legs wouldn't obey. She stood there, trapped in her own body, as David stared at her as if seeing a ghost. "Hannah," he murmured, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible. She swallowed hard. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. She nodded briefly, unable to speak. David slowly stood up, still holding the puppy. He seemed to be struggling to process what he was seeing. His eyes scanned her face, every feature, every detail, as if trying to confirm he wasn't dreaming. "You?" he began, but his voice failed. "I brought my daughter," Hannah managed to say, her voice firmer than she expected. "She found this puppy. Thank you for seeing him." The formality was a protection, a shield, but it fooled no one. David nodded slowly, but his eyes never left hers. There were so many questions in that look, so many unspoken things, and beneath it all, something Hannah recognized instantly, because she still felt the same thing. Desire. He still affected her. After all these years, after all the pain, he still made her heart race. "He'll need to come back in a week," David said, turning to Laura, "so I can check how his paw is healing." But Hannah knew he was talking to her too. "We'll be back," Laura replied. "Jamily, thank you, Doctor." Hannah took her daughter's hand, mumbled a quick thank you, and left as fast as she could, without looking back. But she felt David's gaze fixed on her, burning the back of her neck, following her every step. When they finally got into the car, Hannah locked the doors and leaned her forehead on the steering wheel, breathing deeply. Her heart was racing, her hands shaking. "Mom, are you okay?" Laura asked, worried. "I am, my love," Hannah lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. It was fear. It was panic. It was the certainty that by walking through that door, she had reopened something she swore to keep buried forever. And as she drove back home, with Laura beside her and the puppy asleep in the back seat, Hannah couldn't stop thinking about one thing. David's eyes. That look that said, without words, that he hadn't forgotten either. That perhaps, just like her, he still carried the scars of that love. And that terrified her more than anything else. Part 2. The memories that refused to die. Hannah barely slept that night. Lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, she felt her chest tighten, as if all the emotions she had carefully locked away over the years had found a crack and begun to leak out. She turned on her side, hugged the pillow, and tried to force sleep. But it was useless. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. David. The way he looked at her. The surprise etched on his face. That hoarse voice saying her name as if it were a forgotten prayer. And the worst part, the feeling that, for a second, she had gone back in time. To when they were young. To when they loved without fear. To when they still believed that love was enough. But it wasn't enough. Hannah squeezed her eyes shut, trying to push away the memories that insisted on returning. But they came in waves, each more intense than the last. She remembered the first time she saw him. It was a simple party, at a mutual friend's house. He was leaning against the wall, with that smirk that made her stop in the middle of the room. He wasn't the handsomest man there, but he had something. A presence, an energy that pulled her in like a magnet. They talked all night, laughed at silly things, traded glances that said more than words. And when he walked her home under a sky full of stars, he held her hand. For the first time. Hannah still remembered the feeling, the warmth of his palm, the way his fingers fit into hers, as if they had always belonged there. "Can I see you again?" he asked, his eyes sparkling. "Yes," she replied, her heart racing. And that's how it started. Months of pure happiness, of stolen moments, of long kisses, of nights spent awake until dawn, talking about everything and nothing. David spoke of his dreams. He wanted to be a veterinarian, to care for animals, to make a difference. And Hannah listened as if every word were a gift. She had never felt so seen, so desired, so loved. But then, slowly, things began to change. Hannah turned over in bed again, her heart clenching. She didn't want to remember this part, but memories didn't ask permission. David started drinking. At first, it was just on weekends. Then it became every time they met. He said he needed to relax, that he was stressed with college, with the pressure from his parents. Hannah believed him. She tried to help. She stayed by his side, saying it would pass. But it didn't pass. The nights became unpredictable. Sometimes he was the sweet, affectionate David who made her laugh until her stomach hurt. Other times, he was a stranger, irritable, distant, with harsh words that cut like blades. Hannah never knew which version of him she would find, and on the last night they spent together, everything fell apart. Hannah closed her eyes tight. But the memory returned with cruel clarity. She had prepared everything so carefully. She had decorated the small apartment she shared with a friend, candles scattered around the living room, a simple dinner, but made with love. And in the center of the table, hidden inside a small, brightly wrapped box, was the pregnancy test. Positive. Hannah was nervous, but also excited. Despite everything, she still believed in them. She still thought this news could be the turning point David needed, that he would hug her, kiss her, say he would change, that they would build a family together. She waited, fixed her hair, put on perfume, looked at the clock. He was late, but it was okay. David was always late. When there was finally a knock at the door, Hannah ran to open it, her heart leaping. And then she saw. David was leaning against the doorframe, his eyes cloudy, his breath heavy with alcohol, his shirt crumpled, his hair messy. He didn't even look properly at her. He just walked in, stumbling, and headed straight for the sofa. Hannah stood frozen in the doorway, feeling something inside her crack. "David, did you drink again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "So what?" he mumbled, throwing himself onto the sofa. "Don't start, Hannah. I had a tough day." She took a deep breath, trying to control the frustration rising in her throat. "I prepared a surprise for you," she said, trying to stay calm. "I made dinner. I decorated everything. I wanted tonight to be special." David let out a bitter, joyless laugh. "Special," he repeated scornfully, "thinking I'm a kid to fall for this nonsense." Hannah felt tears sting her eyes. "It's not nonsense, David. I just wanted us to have a moment for ourselves, for you to be present, sober." He turned his face to her, his eyes half closed, his expression hard. "Ah, so now you're my mother, huh? Going to stand there judging me, controlling me?" "I'm not controlling you." Hannah raised her voice, the pain overflowing. "I just wanted you to see me, for you to stop destroying yourself." "I'm not destroying myself," he retorted, suddenly standing up. "It's you who doesn't understand me. You don't know the pressure I'm under. You don't know anything." "Then tell me!" Hannah screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Talk to me, David. I'm here. I've always been here." But he just shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. "You wouldn't understand. No one understands." And then he started to leave. "Where are you going?" Hannah asked desperately. "Anywhere but here," he replied. Without looking back, the door slammed, and Hannah collapsed. She sat on the living room floor amidst the still burning candles and cried until she had no more tears. The box with the pregnancy test remained in the center of the table, untouched. He never knew, and Hannah decided that night that she wouldn't tell him. Not like that. Not to that man who couldn't even take care of himself. She didn't want her daughter to grow up in a home full of broken promises, of sleepless nights, waiting for a father who might never change. In the following days, David tried to contact her. He called dozens of times, sent messages, showed up at the building door. But every time Hannah saw his name on the screen, every time she heard him on the other end of the line, she knew. He was drunk. His voice slurred, his words confused, his apologies empty, and she didn't answer. Until a week later, he simply disappeared. He left the city, and Hannah never heard from him again. Until today. Part 3. The confession and the counter-truth. Hannah opened her eyes in the present, her face wet. She hadn't realized she was crying. She angrily wiped away the tears, annoyed at herself for letting it all return. She got out of bed, went to Laura's room, and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. So beautiful, so perfect, so much like him. Hannah slowly approached, sat on the edge of the bed, and gently stroked the girl's hair. "Did I do the right thing?" she whispered, more to herself than to Laura. "I protected you. I did what I had to do." But deep down, a part of her wondered, did I really? Listen, while on the other side of the city, David also couldn't sleep. He was sitting on his living room sofa, lights off, staring into space. The puppy Laura had brought slept in a box beside him, its paw bandaged, breathing peacefully. But David felt no peace. Hannah. She had appeared there, in his clinic, after all these years, and the impact was like a punch to the gut. He could barely breathe after she left. He closed his eyes, and her image came into focus with painful clarity. Her face slightly more mature, but still incredibly beautiful. Her eyes, those same eyes that left him speechless, and the way she looked at him, with fear, with hurt. David knew why. He got up, went to the small home office and opened an old drawer. Inside, carefully stored, were a few photos. He and Hannah, young, happy, embracing. He picked one up, ran his finger over the image, and felt the guilt squeeze his chest like a vice. He remembered that last night, remembered arriving drunk, being crude, ruining everything, leaving her crying. In the following days, he tried to apologize, called, sent messages, went looking for her, but she wouldn't talk to him. And David knew he couldn't blame her, because every time he tried, he was drunk again. It was a cycle, and he couldn't get out, until he decided to leave. Move to a new city, Portland. Try to start over. And it was the best decision he ever made. He got sober, finished college, built the clinic, rebuilt his life. But Hannah, he never forgot. And now she was back, with a daughter. David looked at the photo again, his heart aching. Do I still have a chance to fix what I broke? He didn't know the answer, but one thing he was sure of. He wouldn't let her escape again without at least trying. Part 4. The inescapable truth. Hannah spent the next few days trying to convince herself that the encounter at the clinic had been just a fluke, an unimportant coincidence. David was there. She brought Laura. It meant nothing. It needed to mean nothing. But her heart stubbornly raced every time she remembered his eyes. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, everything got even more complicated. Laura came home from school jumping with excitement, waving a colorful paper in her hand. Mom, look! she shouted, tossing her backpack onto the sofa. "The school is having a project with veterinarians. They're going to teach us how to care for animals." Hannah felt a squeeze in her chest. "That's great, honey," she said, trying to sound excited. "When is it?" "Next week," Laura replied, her eyes shining. "And guess who's going to be one of the vets? Dr. David, the one who took care of the little black dog." The ground vanished from under Hannah's feet. "David?" she repeated, her voice weaker than intended. "Yeah," Laura continued, oblivious to her mother's reaction. "The principal said he volunteered. Isn't that awesome? I get to see him again." Hannah forced a smile, but inside, she felt panic rising in her throat. "He'll be at the school, near Laura, near me." She tried to find an excuse not to go, but Laura was so excited, so happy, that Hannah didn't have the heart to disappoint her. And so, the following week, there she was, standing in the schoolyard, surrounded by other parents, trying to look calm while her heart hammered in her chest. The activity was outdoors. David and 2 other vets had brought some rescued animals for the children to interact with, teaching them basic care and responsibility. When he arrived, Hannah felt as if all the air had been sucked from the environment. David was dressed simply. Jeans, a white t-shirt, comfortable sneakers. But still, there was something about him that commanded attention. Perhaps it was the way he walked, or the calm smile he offered the children. He greeted the teachers, talked to the other volunteers, and then, as if feeling the weight of her gaze, turned his head. Their eyes met, and the world stopped again. David hesitated for a second, then nodded slightly. A discreet, respectful greeting. Hannah returned it, trying to look indifferent, but knew he had seen the attention in her face. The children gathered around the vets, sitting on the lawn, curious and restless. Laura was in the front row, practically glued to David, with that wide smile Hannah knew so well. "Good morning, everyone," David began, his voice firm yet welcoming. "Today, we're going to talk about something very important. Caring for animals. Do you know why that's so important?" The children shouted excited answers. David smiled patiently and began to explain. He had a natural way of talking to them, of lowering himself to their level, of making every child feel seen. Hannah watched from afar, arms crossed, trying to keep her distance, but it was impossible not to notice how much he had changed. He was no longer the lost boy she knew. There was a solidity to him now, a maturity, a presence that made her uneasy. During the activity, the children were invited to help brush a rescued rabbit's fur. Laura was one of the first to volunteer, and David gently guided her, showing her how to hold the brush, how to make smooth strokes. "Very good, Laura," he said, smiling. "You have a knack for this." The girl beamed. "My mom says I have a knack for everything," she replied proudly. David looked up and met Hannah's eyes again. This time he smiled, a small but sincere smile. And Hannah felt her face flush. She quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in something else, but knew he had noticed. When the activity ended, the children ran off to play, and the parents began to disperse. Hannah took Laura's hand, ready to leave as quickly as possible. But then she heard his voice. "Hannah." She stopped, closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath and turned. David was a few steps away, hands in his pockets, his expression hesitant. "Hi," he said, his voice lower now. "Hi," Hannah replied, holding Laura's hand tight. There was an awkward silence. David looked at the girl, then back at Hannah. She's amazing," he said with a gentle smile. "She has a huge heart." "Thank you, Hannah." Not knowing what else to say, Laura, always uninhibited, tugged at her mother's hand. "Mom, can I go play a little longer?" she asked, pointing to the nearby playground. Hannah hesitated, but David stepped forward. I'll keep an eye on her if you'd like, he offered, his tone careful. Hannah looked at him, surprised. She wanted to say no. She wanted to grab Laura and leave. But something in the way he looked at her, sincere, without pressure, made her nod. Okay, but just 5 more minutes, Laura. The girl ran off, and Hannah was left there, alone with David for the first time in years. The silence returned, but this time it was different. Heavier, more charged. How are you? David asked. Breaking the ice. Fine, Hannah replied too quickly. And you? Fine too, he said, but his voice carried something more. I didn't expect to see you again. Hannah swallowed hard. Yeah, life happens. David took a step forward, slowly, as if afraid of scaring her away. Hannah, I know we ended badly. I know I messed everything up. He paused, his eyes fixed on hers. But I never forgot you. Hannah's heart raced. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come out. I changed, David continued, his voice firm, yet vulnerable. I stopped drinking. Years ago, I rebuilt my life, and a part of me always wondered what would have happened if I had done it sooner, if I had been better. For you. Hannah felt her eyes sting. She looked away, trying to control the emotions that threatened to spill over. David, that was a long time ago, she said, her voice trembling. We aren't those people anymore. I know, he replied softly. But I still feel it. And I think you do too. Hannah turned her face back to him, ready to deny it. But when their eyes met, all her defenses crumbled. Because he was right. She still felt it. In that moment, a ball rolled to their feet. David bent down to pick it up. And when he stood, their hands accidentally brushed as he handed the ball back to a child. It was a brief, insignificant touch, but both of them jolted. Hannah quickly pulled her hand away, as if she'd received a shock. I need to go, she said, her voice hurried. Laura, let's go. The girl came running, and Hannah pulled her by the hand, walking quickly toward the exit. Hannah, wait! David called. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Because if she stopped, if she turned around, if she looked at him again, she was afraid of what might happen. When they finally reached the car, Hannah locked the doors and leaned her forehead on the steering wheel, breathing deeply. Mom, Dr. David is so cool, right? Laura commented innocently. Hannah closed her eyes, trying to calm her still racing heart. Yes, honey, he is. But what scared her most wasn't admitting it. It was realizing that, despite all the time, all the pain, all the reasons to protect herself, she still wanted to be near him. And that was dangerous. Very dangerous. Part 5. The Truth Revealed. Hannah spent the following days trying to maintain distance. She avoided thinking about David. She avoided talking about him. She even avoided driving past the clinic when out with Laura. But fate seemed to have other plans. It was Saturday morning when the phone rang. Hannah was making breakfast. Laura answered before she could reach the device. Hello? The girl said excitedly. There was a pause. Oh, hi, Dr. David? Hannah's heart froze. It's the clinic. Laura covered the phone with her hand and whispered. He wants to talk to you, Mom. Hannah hesitated, but picked up the phone with trembling hands. Hello? She said, trying to sound casual. Hannah. David's voice came through, a little tense. Sorry to call so suddenly, but I need to do a rescue today, and I'm short on help. I remembered you were always good with animals, and thought maybe you could assist. It's near your house. Hannah bit her lip. Every fiber of her being screamed to say no. But then Laura appeared beside her, eyes shining. Is it an animal rescue, Mom? Can we go? Please! And Hannah knew she had no choice. All right, she said, resigned. Where is it? A half hour later, They were in front of an abandoned lot on the outskirts of the neighborhood. David was already there, beside the clinic's truck, wearing a work vest and holding a transport cage. When Hannah got out of the car with Laura, he turned and smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know this isn't easy for you." Hannah just nodded, avoiding his gaze. "What happened?" she asked, trying to focus on the task. "There's a female dog stuck in the rubble inside," David explained, pointing to the ruins of an old house. "The neighbors heard her barking 2 days ago. She must be hurt. It'll be complicated getting her out." "Can I help?" Laura asked eagerly. "You're going to be my special assistant," David replied, crouching down to her level. "But I need you to stay out here, holding our gear." "Can you do that?" The girl agreed, excited, and David handed her a small bag of supplies. Hannah and David entered the lot together. The silence between them was tense, but not uncomfortable. There was something there, a memory of how well they used to work together, of how they understood each other without needing many words. "Careful with this step," David warned, holding her arm when she almost tripped. The touch was brief, but enough to make Hannah's skin tingle. "Thanks," she murmured, quickly moving away. They found the dog at the back of the lot, trapped between 2 wooden beams. She was scared, growling softly, her eyes wide with fear. "Easy, girl," David whispered, approaching slowly. "We just want to help." Hannah watched how he moved, with patience, with respect for the animal, without rushing. It was impossible not to remember how he always had that gift, how he dreamed of caring for animals since he was young. "Hannah, I need you to hold this beam while I pull her out," David instructed. "Can you manage?" She nodded and positioned herself beside him. Together, they lifted the heavy wood, and David carefully pulled the dog free. The animal was hurt, but alive. "We did it," Hannah said, letting out a sigh of relief. "We did," David repeated, looking at her. And for a moment, their eyes met. There was something there, something that went beyond the rescue, something neither of them knew how to name. But then the sky suddenly darkened. Hannah looked up and felt the first drops of rain. "A storm's coming," David said, looking around. "We'll have to hurry." They rushed out, but the rain was faster. In seconds it was pouring, soaking them. Laura was already in Hannah's car, protected. David put the dog in his truck and then turned to Hannah. "Get in here," he shouted, opening the passenger door. Hannah hesitated, but the rain was relentless. She got in, slamming the door shut. They were both there, breathless, drenched. The sound of the rain beating on the truck roof like drums. The silence that followed was charged. David ran his hand over his face, clearing the water from his eyes. Hannah did the same, but her hands were trembling, not from cold, but from something she didn't want to admit. "Thank you for coming," David said, finally breaking the silence. "I know you didn't want to. I came for the dog," Hannah replied too quickly. David let out a low, humorless laugh. "Of course, for the dog." Hannah turned her face to him, irritated. "What do you want me to say, David? That I came because I wanted to see you? That I can't stop thinking about you since that day at the clinic?" The words tumbled out before she could hold them back, and the silence that followed was deafening. David stared at her, his eyes wide. "Is that true?" he asked, his voice rough. "You think about me?" Hannah looked away, her face burning with shame and anger. "It doesn't matter," she murmured. "It doesn't change anything." "It changes everything, Hannah," David countered, his voice firmer now. "Because I can't stop thinking about you either. Since you showed up at the clinic, He paused, ran his hand through his wet hair. "I haven't slept properly. I can't work right. I just keep thinking about why you vanished. Why you never gave me a chance to explain. To apologize." "Apologize." Hannah turned to him, the pain overflowing. "David, you showed up drunk that night. I had prepared everything. I got dressed up. I waited for you, and you showed up completely drunk and treated me like a bother. I know, he shouted, his voice echoing inside the truck. I know, Hannah, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself for ruining the only good thing I had in my life. His eyes were watering now. Hannah had never seen David like this. So vulnerable, so broken. I was a mess, he continued, his voice trembling. I was drowning in alcohol. I didn't know how to handle the pressure, the frustration, anything. And I hurt you, the only person who truly cared about me. Hannah felt the tears stream down her face, mixing with the rainwater. You hurt me, David, so much, and I couldn't stay and watch you destroy yourself. I couldn't wait for you to change when you didn't even know if you wanted to change. But I did change, David said, leaning closer to her. Hannah, I changed. It's been 5 years since I touched a drop of alcohol. I did therapy. I rebuilt my life from scratch. I am not that man anymore. Hannah shook her head, tears falling faster now. But I'm still afraid, she confessed, her voice breaking. I'm afraid to believe you again and for you to go back to who you were. David held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. I am never going back to who I was, he said, his voice firm, his eyes locked on hers. Because that man almost lost everything. I will not make the same mistake twice. Hannah sobbed, closing her eyes. And when David leaned his forehead against hers, she didn't pull away. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, feeling each other's warmth. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside the truck, there was only the two of them, and the entire weight of a past that still needed to be healed. I don't know if I can trust you again, Hannah whispered, her eyes still closed. Then let me prove it to you, David replied, his voice rough. Let me show you I've changed, that I deserve a second chance. Hannah opened her eyes and met his. And there, in that gaze, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Sincerity. Truth. Hope. They almost kissed. Their lips were inches apart. Their breathing was ragged. The desire was palpable. But then Hannah pulled back. I can't, she said, her voice trembling. Not now, not like this. David let her go slowly, respecting her space. But his eyes said everything. He would wait, however long it took. Hannah opened the truck door and ran out into the rain, sprinting to her own car. She got in, locked the doors, and leaned her forehead on the steering wheel. Mom, are you okay? Laura asked, worried. I am, love, Hannah lied, wiping away her tears. Let's go home. But as she drove, she still felt the warmth of his hands, the closeness of his lips, the sound of his voice saying he had changed. And for the first time in years, Hannah allowed herself to think, what if he's telling the truth? Part 6. The Ultimate Confession. Hannah couldn't sleep that night. Lying in bed, she still felt the heat of David's hands on her face, the way he looked at her, the intensity of that almost kiss that still burned on her lips, even though it hadn't happened. She gave up on sleeping. She got out of bed, put on a robe, and went to the living room. She sat on the sofa, hugging her knees, until her gaze landed on the bookshelf. In the corner, pushed to the back, was an old shoebox she hadn't opened in years. She grabbed the box and put it on her lap. She breathed deeply and took off the lid. The past hit her like a punch. Inside were old photographs, handwritten letters, folded notes. And at the bottom, wrapped in a paper napkin yellowed with time, was the pregnancy test. Hannah picked up the test with trembling hands. The 2 lines were still there, faded, but visible. She put the test aside and picked up one of the letters. It was one she had written, but never sent. The handwriting was shaky, stained with old tears. My dearest David, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe I'll never have the courage to give it to you. But I need to write. Because if I don't put this out, I think I'll suffocate. I'm pregnant. It's a girl. I already know. I can't explain how, but I feel it. And she is yours. She is ours. I wanted to tell you that night. I had prepared everything. I wanted it to be special. I wanted to see your reaction. I wanted you to hug me and say everything would be all right, but you showed up drunk. And I realized I couldn't tell you that way. I couldn't bring a child into a world where her father can barely take care of himself. I loved you, David. I truly loved you. But I can't anymore. Not like this. I'm leaving. I'm going to raise our daughter alone. And maybe one day, when you are better, when it is safe, I will tell you. But until then, I need to forget you, even if my heart still screams your name every night. Hannah. Tears streamed down Hannah's face as she read her own words. She folded the letter again and put it back in the box. Then she picked up a photograph. It was of the two of them. They were in a park, sitting under a tree. David was hugging her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder, smiling. Hannah smiled too, a wide, genuine smile, full of happiness. She closed the box and hugged it against her chest, crying in silence. She cried for the girl she was, for the love she lost, for the life that could have been. And then, amidst the tears, a question arose, clear and inevitable. What if he really did change? Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, David also couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office, a single light on, looking at an old photo he had kept in his wallet for years. It was of Hannah. He touched his own lips, remembering how close he had been to kissing her inside the truck. So close, and yet so far. I will prove it to you, Hannah, he murmured to himself. I will show you I've changed, and that I still love you. He knew he wouldn't give up. Not this time. The following week passed like a blur for Hannah. Laura, on the other hand, wouldn't stop talking about Dr. David. Mom, do you think Dr. David would like to come over for dinner sometime? She asked innocently over breakfast toast. Hannah almost choked. Why do you want that, honey? Laura shrugged. Because he's nice, and you look different when you talk about him. Before Hannah could respond, the school called. Laura had forgotten an important notebook. Hannah sighed, grabbed the keys, and went with her daughter. At the school, the secretary handed them the notebook, along with a letter found in Laura's locker. We found this too, the clerk said, handing over a yellowed envelope. Must have fallen out of an old backpack. Hannah took the envelope without thinking, then looked at the handwriting. It was a letter, written in her hand. The letter she had written to David almost 9 years ago. The one she never sent. How did this get here? Hannah's hands trembled as she reread her own words. Then she remembered. Weeks ago, Laura had looked through the old photo box. The panic rose in Hannah's throat. If that letter was in the locker, someone might have seen it. Then, as if the universe were conspiring against her, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hannah answered, hesitant. Hello, Hannah? The voice was deep, tense. It was David. We need to talk now. Her stomach lurched. How did you get my number? The school secretary gave it to me. I said it was urgent. He paused. Hannah, I read the letter. The ground vanished from under her feet. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. The letter you wrote. I found it today. At the school, it fell out of a book, with my name on the envelope. Hannah closed her eyes, feeling the tears sting. No, not like this. Hannah, please. David's voice was choked now. I need to see you. I need to look into your eyes and hear it from you. Laura. Is Laura my daughter? The silence was deafening. Where are you? Hannah asked, her voice trembling. I'm at the clinic, but I'll come to you. Send me your address. Hannah took a deep breath, trying to control the turmoil. Meet me at the park near the school. In 20 minutes. I'll be there. Part 7. The Park, the Truth, and the Promise. 20 minutes later, Hannah was sitting on a park bench, hands sweating, heart hammering in her chest. She saw David's truck pull up. He got out quickly, his face tense, his eyes red. He held the letter in his hand. He walked to her, stopped a few feet away, and just stood there, staring. His voice came out rough, broken. Is it true? She looked away, tears already falling. David, Answer me, he interrupted, taking a step forward. Please, just tell me the truth. Hannah took a deep breath. She raised her eyes and met his. And finally, after carrying that secret for so many years, she said, Yes, Lara is your daughter. David staggered as if he'd been punched. He ran his hand over his face, his eyes watering, his breath catching. Why? Was all he could manage. Why did you never tell me? Hannah got up from the bench, tears streaming freely now. Because I couldn't, she screamed, the pain overflowing. You were completely lost, David. You drank every day. You showed up drunk the night I was going to tell you. I prepared everything and you treated me like I was nothing. David shook his head, tears running down his face. But I changed, Hannah. I changed. If you had given me a chance, if you had told me... I couldn't risk it, Hannah sobbed, interrupting him. I couldn't bring my daughter into a world where her father could barely stand up. I wouldn't let her grow up watching you destroy yourself. David took another step forward, holding her shoulders firmly but gently. But she is mine, Hannah. She is my daughter. And I lost 8 years of her life because of a decision you made alone. I know, Hannah cried, breaking down. I know, and I carry that with me every day. But I did what I thought was right. I protected you from her, and I protected her from you. David released her shoulders. He stepped back and covered his face with his hands, sobbing. I lost everything. I lost you. I lost years with my daughter. I lost the chance to be there when she was born, when she took her first steps, when she said her first words. Hannah sat down on the bench again, hugging her knees, crying. I know, and I'm so sorry. So sorry. David slowly approached, knelt in front of her, and held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. Why didn't you ever tell me, Hannah? Even later when I left the city. Why? Hannah closed her eyes, tears soaking his hands. Because I was afraid. Afraid you hadn't really changed. Afraid to let you into her life and for you to disappear again. I wouldn't do that to her. I wouldn't let my daughter suffer. David pressed his forehead against hers, and they stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing together, crying together. I changed, he whispered. I swear it, Hannah. I changed, and I will never, ever disappear from her life. Or yours. Hannah opened her eyes, and what she saw in his eyes completely broke down her defenses. Truth, pain, love. I don't know if I can trust you again, she confessed, her voice trembling. Then let me prove it, David said, gently stroking her face with his thumbs. Let me meet my daughter. Let me be present. Let me be the father I never got to be. Hannah sobbed but slowly nodded. But she can't know, not yet, not until I'm sure. David took a deep breath and agreed. All right, your way, your time. But please, don't push me away again. Hannah held his hands, still resting on her face. I won't. And then, without thinking, without planning, she leaned in and pressed her lips against his. It was a soft kiss, wet with tears, full of pain, but also of something neither of them expected to feel again. Hope. When they separated, they were breathless. David held her face again, his eyes locked on hers. I never stopped loving you, Hannah. She closed her eyes, a fresh wave of tears descending. Me neither. But then she pulled away, wiping her face. But that doesn't change the past, David. and it doesn't guarantee the future. We need to go slowly." He nodded, respecting her space. "Slowly, I promise." Hannah stood up, still trembling. David did the same. "I'm going to get Laura," she said. "And if you want, you can come over tomorrow so we can talk calmly." David smiled, a small, genuine smile. "I'll be there." Hannah nodded and started to walk away. But before leaving completely, she turned. "David?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up." He smiled again, his eyes still moist. "I will never give up on you both." And Hannah knew at that moment that maybe, just maybe, they still had a chance. Part wait. The intimacy of purpose. The days that followed were strange, yet also filled with a lightness Hannah hadn't felt in years. David began visiting the house. At first, the meetings were short. He brought treats for Laura. He talked about the clinic animals. He helped with some small repair Hannah needed. Always respectful, always careful. As if he knew he was treading on fragile ground. Laura adored him. The girl clung to him as if they were old friends. She told him school stories, showed him drawings, asked to hear about animal rescues. And David listened to everything with genuine attention, his eyes shining every time she spoke. Hannah watched from afar, her heart aching, because she saw something undeniable in them. The blood connection. The way Laura laughed was just like David's. The way he tilted his head when he was paying attention was the same as the girl's. And every time Hannah saw the two of them together, she felt a mix of happiness and guilt. Happiness for finally seeing Laura with her father. Guilt for having stolen so much time from them. But she also felt something else. Something she tried to ignore, but that grew with every visit. Desire. Because David didn't look at her like a stranger. He looked like someone who still remembered every detail about her. The way she bit her lip when she was nervous. The way she twisted a lock of hair when she was thinking. The way she smirked when she was genuinely happy. And Hannah realized that she also remembered everything about him. It was on a Friday that everything changed. David had called earlier, saying he wanted to take Laura to see the clinic properly. Not just the office, but the backstage area where the rescued animals were kept. He wanted to show her how the rehabilitation work functioned. Laura was euphoric, and Hannah, though hesitant, agreed. "You're coming too, right, Mom?" Laura asked, her eyes pleading. Hannah was about to make an excuse, but David appeared at the door at that moment, and their eyes met. "Come on, Hannah," he said, his voice soft. "It'll be fun, and I'd like you to be there." She couldn't say no, so the three of them went together. In David's car, with Laura in the back seat talking non-stop, and Hannah in the front, trying not to notice how good it felt to be there. The three of them, like a family. When they arrived at the clinic, David showed Laura everything. The kennels, the rescued cats, even an owl recovering from a broken wing. The girl was amazed with every new animal, asking endless questions. "And what about that one, Dr. David?" She pointed to a large dog lying in the corner. "That's Thor," David replied, crouching down next to Laura. "He was hit by a car and became afraid of people, but he's getting better every day. Can I go near him?" "You can, but slowly. And let him come to you, okay?" Laura nodded seriously and approached carefully. Thor lifted his head, sniffed the air, and then slowly walked to the girl. She held out her hand, and he sniffed, then licked her fingers. Laura let out a burst of pure joy, and David smiled proudly. Hannah watched everything, her heart aching, because she saw something beautiful forming there, something she had denied for so long. After a while, Laura asked to stay and play with the puppies in the outdoor area, and David agreed, leaving an assistant to watch her. He then turned to Hannah. "Come, I want to show you something." She followed him to a small room in the back. It was his office, simple but welcoming. There was a desk covered in papers, photos of rescued animals on the walls, and a shelf of veterinary books. "Is this where you spend most of your time?" Hannah asked, looking around. "Here in the exam rooms." David leaned against the desk, arms crossed, and watched her. "But that's not what I wanted to show you." Hannah turned to him, curious. David opened a drawer and took out a photo. He handed it to her. It was their photo, the same one Hannah had in the box at home. The two of them under the tree, smiling. "How did you?" Hannah began, surprised. "I always carried it with me," David confessed, his voice low. "Even when I left, even when I tried to move on, I never could forget you, Hannah." She felt her chest tighten, her eyes stinging. "I know we have to go slowly," he continued, taking a step forward. "I know you're still afraid, but I need you to know that I'm here, for real, and I'm not going anywhere." Hannah held the photo with both hands, looking at the image of them. So young, so happy. "I never forgot you either," she admitted, her voice trembling. "As much as I tried, you were always here." She put her hand on her chest. David moved closer until he was just inches from her. Hannah looked up and met his eyes, and the air between them grew charged. "Hannah," he whispered, his voice rough. "Can I?" He didn't finish the sentence, but she understood. And this time, she didn't pull back. David gently held her face, as if she were made of glass, and kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss in the park. Quick, wet with tears, full of desperation. This kiss was different. It was slow, deep, full of pent-up longing, of lost years, of unspoken promises. Hannah felt her legs weaken. She held his shoulders for balance, and he pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. His hands traced her waist, firm but respectful, and Hannah surrendered, allowing herself to feel everything: the desire, the need, the love that had never left. When they finally separated, they were breathless. David rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, trying to catch his breath. "I still love you," he said, his voice husky. Never stopped. Hannah felt tears fall. "Me too," she confessed. "And that scares me." David held her face again, forcing her to look at him. "You don't have to be scared. I won't hurt you again. I promise." Hannah wanted to believe. With every fiber of her being, she wanted to believe. And maybe, finally, she was ready for it. They returned to where Laura was, and the girl didn't even notice that anything had changed. She continued playing with the puppies, radiant with smiles, but Hannah and David knew, because something had changed. A line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. As they were leaving, David stopped Hannah before she got into the car. "Hannah, I wanted to ask you out to dinner. Just the two of us, if you want." She hesitated, looked at Laura, who was already in the car, and then back at David. "I don't know if—" "Please," he insisted, holding her hand. "Just dinner, so we can talk. No pressure, no rush." Hannah took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, but let me arrange for someone to watch Laura." David smiled, that smile that still made her heart race. "Saturday night?" Saturday night. On Saturday, Hannah was nervous as a teenager. She spent the entire afternoon choosing what to wear, changing clothes multiple times. Mrs. Ruth, her trusted neighbor, had offered to watch Laura. When David knocked on the door, Hannah took a deep breath and opened it. He looked handsome. Dress pants, a dark blue shirt, his hair neatly styled. And the way he looked at her, as if seeing the most beautiful thing in the world, made Hannah's breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice soft. "Thank you," Hannah murmured, feeling her face warm. The dinner was at a small, cozy restaurant. They sat at a corner table, and for a moment there was an awkward silence. But then David started talking about how he got sober, about the therapy, about how he rebuilt his life from scratch. and Hannah listened to everything, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Part 9. The vulnerable truth and the final choice, the warmth of the wine and the genuine honesty in David's voice slowly chipped away at the wall Hannah had built. The day you left, Hannah, David continued, his voice soft. I was standing in our apartment, drunk, and I saw the life I wanted literally walk out the door. The next few weeks were the bottom for me. But your silence, it was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It wasn't hatred. It was the absolute lack of hope. That was what finally forced me to get help. I didn't get sober for you then. I got sober so I wouldn't destroy myself. But every day since, I've stayed sober for the man I knew you deserved. He reached across this table and covered her hand with his. I know I have no right to ask this, but I have to know. If I had been that man back then, would you have stayed? Would we have had a life together? Hannah looked down at their joined hands. The question hurt because it demanded she confront the what if she had buried for so long. She slowly raised her eyes. Yes, David, she admitted, tears welling up. I loved the man you were when you were sober. I would have stood by that man, through anything. The reason I left wasn't the pain of the situation. It was the pain of watching the real you disappear. He nodded, a deep sadness in his eyes. I understand. I accept that. Now let me tell you something I've realized. Laura is not just my second chance with you. She's the proof that the love we had was real and beautiful, even when I was at my worst. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I want to be a father to her, Hannah. Fully. But I also know that if you and I aren't on solid ground, if you can't look at me and see a partner, not just a father for Laura, it won't work. The question isn't whether I've changed. The question is whether you can trust the man I am today, enough to rebuild a life that should have started 9 years ago. Hannah closed her eyes, letting the weight of his question settle. He wasn't asking for passion. He was asking for trust, the hardest thing she had to give. She looked at his face, seeing the honesty that she had fought to deny. She saw the true David, the compassionate vet, the gentle father figure, the sober, grounded man. I can't promise that I don't have fear, Hannah said, her voice stronger now. But I can promise that I don't have hatred. I trust the man sitting across from me, David, and I want to see where this goes. David smiled, a slow, radiant smile that lit up the restaurant. He lifted her hand and kissed it, sealing not a contract of love, but a covenant of hope. Part 10. The Legacy of Second Chances. The story of Hannah and David is a powerful testament to the fact that sometimes the end of one chapter is simply the necessary pain required to begin a true one. Their love wasn't erased by time or distance. It was simply put on hold until David could become the man worthy of it, and Hannah could find the courage to accept his redemption. They didn't rush. They built their relationship slowly, letting David become a permanent, stable, and loving figure in Laura's life first, before they allowed themselves to fall back into the deep love they shared. Laura, never knowing the full drama, simply gained the incredible father she always dreamed of. Years later, sitting under the same kind of tree where David had first confessed his love to her, they watched Laura, now a teenager, talking enthusiastically about applying to veterinary school. Hannah leaned her head on David's shoulder. We did it, she whispered. We found our way back. We found our truth, Hannah, David corrected, squeezing her hand. The secret broke us, but it was the truth that healed us, and it gave us Laura. Their journey proved that redemption is possible, and the deepest form of love is the one that allows, and even demands, growth and self-improvement from both partners. They showed that a second chance isn't a gift. It's a foundation, built on honesty and the unwavering commitment to never let the best part of yourself disappear again. Thank you for following this beautiful story of healing and hope. Final call to action. Subscribe to the channel to never miss a story of true human connection. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. Comment below. What was the hardest thing for Hannah to forgive? The drinking or the missed years with Laura? We want to hear your thoughts. Until our next inspiring story.